Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pongers. My name is Anthony.
And as always, my name is Ryan.
And thank you so much for joining us this week.
I
got a decent... Oh, Ryan, what do you got?
I was going to say, word of the day for everybody, comfortability. It's not a real word, but it's a word I said nonetheless today. So comfortability, word of the day.
Well, as a number of people have pointed out over the past 3.5 years, ever since Infinity War, all words are made up. So
it's a good point.
We can say that that's a word of the day.
Word of the day.
And no one can really tell us wrong.
Absolutely.
Plus, I'm an English major, so I'm allowed to, I was inducted into the English cult, so I am one of the people that's allowed to decide how the English language works.
You're the inside man.
And so I'm saying that
you're allowed to bend the rules a little bit, so to speak. All right. Good to know.
So I'm saying that comfortability is now a word.
Good to know.
Agreed.
Good to know, because I'm going to invent probably a lot more words as we record these episodes.
Excellent. So I will save our description of our topic for the second half. It will be in the title, so if you're dying to know, just look at the title of this episode. But for now, let's talk about our weeks. Ryan, what have you done since I last saw you? And I saw you in person last time.
You did.
So,
it was a great time.
Change.
Thank you so much for coming and seeing me. Had a blast.
Well, I was more there to see Mark to celebrate his birthday.
Right, yeah, but
that's a separate bit.
Nonetheless, glad I got to meet you, and glad we got to hang out and record.
Yeah.
I haven't really been doing a whole lot, to be honest. I finished some of those TV shows I had mentioned, Lock and Key, You. I finally started watching more Squid Games. Not done with it.
Excellent.
Haven't had a whole lot of time, but nonetheless, got back into that show. More of the stuff
I saw on Twitter this morning that the director of Squid Game announced that there will in fact be a season 2.
I also saw that. I did see that.
I'm not that surprised considering that Netflix would throw an exorbitant amount of money at him to make a season 2.
Oh, especially after how well it did. Absolutely, it's like a worldwide show.
Yeah, it's Netflix's most popular show, as I'm pretty sure I've mentioned on the podcast.
Oh, I think you did. Yeah, but I mean, no surprise there.
Yeah.
I feel like, speaking of Twitter, I've been really diving into and exploring Twitter. It's been kind of fun. I was never been a big Twitter guy until I started using it more for the podcast and whatnot, and it's kind of fun.
So you're in the honeymoon phase at this point in time. I used to have a lot of fun on Twitter too.
Yes.
I don't as much anymore. It's a hard place.
Yeah. Twitter and I have gotten to the fun part of our relationship, so to speak.
Well, I'm happy that you're in the enjoyment part of it at the moment. That's nice.
I can't wait to the part where I decide to quit it for a while and then come back to it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call that phase necessarily. We'll just call it the break phase.
The addiction phase, trying to stave off the addiction phase.
Well, we'll use a Friends reference here and just say we're on a break.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah,
I'll allow it.
As the English major, I appreciate it. But yeah, so a lot of the stuff I've been doing is kind of just like my own thing outside of games and the podcast. I getting a new place to myself, so that'll be fun. Really weird for me, but it'll be pretty cool.
So you're confirmed to not have roommates?
Yep.
Whenever you move into your place?
Yep. Next August, I signed, and it'll be just me.
Wow.
But I'll have this whole rooms and space for all of my podcast stuff. For some board games, obviously, because hopefully, as you guys know at this point, I'm a huge board game nerd / fan, so I'll have kind of a space for all that to develop. Speaking of podcasts, actually, I don't think I've told you this yet, Anthony. I don't know if this is going to come off the ground anytime soon, but I've started developing yet another podcast.
Wow, I was just about to ask. It's he's going to tell me that he started a second podcast, hasn't he?
Has not started, but and I'm not going to say too much about it because I still have a lot of stuff I want to work on with it before I even contemplate putting it out right away. But I will say this is something that's become very, very important to me in the last few years and really has been important to me all my life, despite not realizing that until more recently, is mental health. And I think...
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm not an expert. I don't have a degree in psychology and I haven't studied to be a therapist or anything like that. But with the experiences I've had and with some of the things I've seen online and through my friends, I just think that it'd be a really cool way to build a community rather than me giving information to people. It'd be a cool way for me to interact with people and for people to interact with each other and kind of echo the sentiments of each other to spread awareness and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Look out for that maybe in the future. But
yeah, that sounds great. Are you going to be hosting it solo, or are you going to have other people co-host it with you, or is that something that you haven't even decided yet?
At the moment, I think it's going to be more of a solo-based thing with guests intermittently.
Okay.
Like I have a lot of ideas for different things people can bring to the table, but as of right now, it's a me kind of project. But yeah,
Right.
so that's been something that I've been thinking a lot about. I started bartending again, like officially, so that's been fun.
Very nice. Yeah.
Make a couple extra bucks on the side, have some spending money, good stuff like that.
Did you even make me a drink when I was down there?
I
don't think
definitely
you
didn't.
Did.
Oh,
That's
opportunity
man,
missed.
Definitely, yeah. That was a swing and a miss there. We should have done something about that.
But you know what? I'm sure I'm gonna find ways to see you more nowadays. Now that we've gotten through that awkward phase of, hey, I haven't met you yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll happen. I'm not worried.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, I guess so. Bartending. I guess the only other thing I have to talk about, and this is actually related to games. Every year with my family for Thanksgiving, we get together, obviously, and I host. I'm like a game show host almost. I host a Jeopardy game that I
Ooh,
create.
Very nice.
It's all started off. I don't know if you guys caught that Friends reference earlier, but me and my family are all always for years debated who knew that show the best, and so my Aunt Shannon decided, hey, let's do this. Let's finally figure out who knows the best. And for those of my family that are listening to this right now, they know exactly what I'm going to say. I've never lost. I've won. I've won every year. So you guys, you can.
So have you been finally kicked out of the participant role and are now the runner?
Pretty much.
Everything?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. But not everybody in my family knows that show at all. So I kind of made a different way of playing the game, and this way everyone can play. All my grandparents, all my cousins, my other people that come by. So yeah, a way that everyone can play. We do some Jeopardy. But apparently, and this is the funny part, so if any of you guys are listening, pardon me for making fun of you a little bit, but apparently the game I made was too hard for them.
Yep.
And I felt really bad, but at the same time I laughed at them a little bit because my sister, I have a twin sister, I don't know if anybody knew that, but she won by a lot because she knew a lot of that stuff. Maybe it's like an age thing. I don't know.
Telepathic connection, almost.
Oh, obviously, yeah. She read my mind. But I'll say this: I've made a couple different versions of the game for them to try out. So if you guys are listening, look forward to a new brand of Jeopardy this year.
Very nice.
And that's all I got. Amongst projects and whatnot, I've had a pretty slow week. Work's finally picking back up, but that's neither here nor there. Anthony, tell us about what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I had, both a somewhat open week and a bit closed week since my girlfriend, Emily, she got her booster shot this past Friday, and it kind of wiped her out. So I spent some of this past weekend, looking after her, make sure that she was all right. So that, obviously don't resent her whatsoever since she definitely needs someone. Everyone, when they're sick, needs someone to at least check in on them, if not do more, depending on what they need. But that did cut down on my time a tiny bit.
Yeah.
But in terms of things that I actually did, two main things.
How's she feeling, by the way? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, she's feeling better. After on one day on the weekend, we got her to take some cold medicine, and then she slept for like 15 hours straight. Woke up for some hours, slept again, woke up, ate dinner, and then fell asleep again. So, tons of sleeping.
Yeah.
It's what you should do when you're sick, honestly. Just make sure that you just pump out as much sleep as you can.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, like eating is super important because you need that nutrition to keep your immune system up and all that. And that's something I personally never do when I'm sick. I don't ever eat, and it's so bad. But
yeah, I mean, sometimes I think you should kind of listen to your body since
that's
cramming
true.
food that it doesn't want in while you're sick is not great and will just make the situation worse. But you do definitely need at least a little bit of food to make sure that you're effectively fighting off whatever your body's trying to get rid of.
That's fair. I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to my body next time. When it tells me no food, I'm just gonna do no food. That's not true, but saltines.
But But yeah, so in terms of the realm of entertainment, I had two main pursuits over the past week to week and a half. Number one, I started my third attempt at getting into / finishing Dragon Quest XI.
Okay.
Are you a Dragon Quest fan or know anything about Dragon Quest at all?
Is that the game with like the eggs?
No, not entirely. It's one of
that
the
was such
oldest...
a dumb question.
I mean, you know, when you don't know, you don't know. That's fine. Like, I'm not gonna fault you for not knowing.
Appreciate that.
But it's one of the oldest role-playing games from Japan. It's like, I think older than Final Fantasy by like a year or two. And in that time, it stayed pretty consistent, established a pretty solid fan base, and one of the things that its fans like it for is that like it's usually pretty polished because it hasn't changed all that much since like the 1980s. So like the combat is pretty simplistic. It's still turn-based and everything. Pretty traditional fantasy world. It's not entirely a revolutionary plot line. You know, you're the chosen one sent to take out the Dark Lord or whatever nouns you want to put in there. Mm-hmm. But, you know, since it's had such, like, a long storied history, I always wanted to try to get into one. And so it first came out in the West in 2018, and I bought it for the PS4, played an hour, and because the composer is a miserly old man, or was a miserly old man since he passed away this year, he put in, like, really awful-sounding MIDI music as the soundtrack instead of like the fully orchestral version that he made already so that he could sell some CDs. And I hated the MIDI music so much that I just stopped playing and never went back. And then the year after that, they released it on Switch with an actual orchestral music and a whole bunch of other improvements. So I tried it again, made it about like 10 hours in, and some other games came out in the time and I dropped it. Yeah. And then I didn't finish it.
That's something that I do a lot too, is like when other things that I really want to do come out in the middle of me like finishing a game or even in the middle of a video sometimes, I'll just put it aside and forget about it. I would say that I can get bored pretty easily, like I would agree with that, but this isn't even about that. It's just like,
I mean, sometimes your attention just changes. Yeah. That's just a fact.
When something is a little bit more interesting.
Yeah. So I finally was like, you know what, I'm going to give it one last shot. And this will actually tie into the next thing that I did this week. I watched a reviewer talk about Dragon Quest XI. And the way that he described it really got me. It's like, you know what? I don't have a game right now that I can just hop onto Discord and play while I'm talking with my friends. So I'm going to buy this game, and since it's, you know, not the most brain power RPG, since it's very, very classic, like, choose your spell, attack your enemy, very basic. If you've played, like, a Pokemon or Final Fantasy before 10, you pretty much have the whole idea. And it's been a decent amount of fun. It's been, like, very classic, very fun. All of the enemies are really charming. You know, they always have, like, really punny names. So there'll be, like, a squid that draws calligraphy that'll be, like, the calamari spelt in a way that tries to include, like, calligraphy into its name. Mm-hmm. You know, just a bunch of nice little touches that, you know, make it a really fun and charming experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So I've played, I think, about 6 to 10 hours of that so far, and I played all of that in the past week. But I'm gonna, you know, whenever I just want to talk to my friends and need something to occupy my hands, just gonna put on some more Dragon Quest XI and see if I can actually finish it this time.
I think that's something I need to find now, a new one, because it's always been Minecraft. But like I said, sometimes I just need something new, and I've been playing so much Minecraft. I haven't played, actually, I don't think I've played any Minecraft since we recorded last. If not, very little. But
well, we're not going to talk about it this week. It's going to be a topic in a coming week. Mm-hmm. But there's a game that theoretically I could talk you into playing sometime.
I'm sure.
Yeah. How much do you know about a game called Final Fantasy XIV? And I know I've talked about it.
I know about what you've told me.
Week. Okay. I'm planning to talk about that in the upcoming week.
All right. I look forward to it.
That's one of my topics, but we'll see.
Sure.
And the other thing that I did, so that reviewer that I talked about that made me want to play Dragon Quest XI, his name is Tim Rogers. I'm going to guess that you haven't heard the name Tim Rogers before.
I've heard of a lot of people named Tim, and I know a lot of people with the last name Rogers, but them together, can't say that I have.
Okay. So, Tim Rogers is a person that has a mental condition where he hasn't forgotten anything that's happened to him since he's been about 3 years old.
Is this a condition or a superpower?
It's a condition.
Interesting.
I would call it a blessing and a curse. Because he could describe like any day, anything that happened to him with perfect clarity, like it just happened like 10 seconds ago. But this man, Tim Rogers, is a game reviewer, and has reviewed games for about 20 years at this point. And he started a new independent channel last year called Action Button, where he does exhaustive looks into video games. He talks about his process in his first review, where he spends about a few weeks to a month playing the game, taking meticulous notes, playing the game actually multiple times, like 3 to 4 times at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Just doing like complete dissection of everything about the game, and then he pumps out videos that have always been over 2 hours long on this new podcast. And so he came out, I think last week on Sunday, maybe Monday or Tuesday, with a review for Cyberpunk 2077, which, for all parts combined, is about 10 hours long.
I'm assuming 2077 is not how many games it's come out with. Like, it hasn't come out with 2077 games.
No, it was meant to... Do you know about The Witcher 3 at all?
See, I'll be honest. No.
Okay. So there's this big RPG company called CD Projekt Red, based in Poland, I think.
All right.
That got really, really big just by releasing this game in 2015 called The Witcher 3 that basically everyone and their mother on the internet loved. And they hyped up their new game, which was going to be like a cyberpunk, so think techie Blade Runner type future, where it's going to be like a first-person RPG. And it came out and it was kind of a fundamental disaster from beginning to end. Like, just didn't run properly, didn't have all that interesting content, lots of AI, like everything more or less kind of just fundamentally broken, especially on consoles. But that's a something for a different time. But I have been spending some time trying to catch up on Tim Rogers' previous reviews so that I can watch the Cyberpunk 10-hour review, since all of his reviews so far, he said, are kind of like supposed to chronicle game development or AAA game development and where they came from and everything. So I'm now officially, just as today, am caught up on Tim Rogers, so I can start his 10-hour Cyberpunk review over the course of the next week and watch it while I'm doing some menial work or driving or anything like that.
Almost like it's a podcast.
Yeah, basically a podcast, except longer than any podcast that I subscribe to, more or less. I don't subscribe to 10-hour podcasts.
I mean, that's fair.
I don't do that.
My grandparents lived about 10 hours away, and that's like the perfect time. Like, that would make the drive go by like that. That would be great.
I mean, I didn't mention it on last week's podcast since I hadn't finished the one I was working on, but I did watch it when I was driving down to Iowa. I was watching some Tim Rogers stuff.
Yeah.
But, if you ever want, like, something exhaustive that goes, like, not entirely minute by minute, but somebody who knows their stuff, has been doing this for a while, and recalls every minute detail of every playthrough that he does, you should check out Tim Rogers.
I was going to say, if this guy... if he's got 10 hours worth of content, you got to think he at least has given it a lot of thought.
Oh, absolutely.
It helps that he has a superpower, but...
Yeah, more or less. So he spent about 9 months working on the Cyberpunk 2077 review. He spent a very long time on it, but he's also done a review of Pac-Man, a review of the original 1990s Doom, The Last of Us, and then Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I definitely need to hear that review of Pac-Man, because Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man, those are my games, dude.
Yeah.
My it was weird because I never, this is kind of a weird side tangent, but
Go for it.
I can't even speak. It's a good thing I'm a Spanish major because my English is terrible. But sometimes I'll like find old arcade games and like in friends' houses and whatnot growing up, and then when I got to college or maybe late high school, my cousins moved into this house up in Wisconsin, and it came with like all these cool games. They had a dartboard, they had pool, they had a awesome Miss Pac-Man machine, and I would sit on that thing all day. That was my game. I broke all their. To be fair, their records sucked, but I broke all their records.
Yeah.
I feel like if I like played that all day every day, I could be a really good player, like a professional player at it.
Well, from what I remember, he does touch on Miss Pac-Man a decent amount.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
In that review, and it is like a 3-hour review, and he touches on not just the video game but the culture surrounding it.
Ooh.
So I don't know if you knew this, but this is gonna take a sharp turn into something serious real quick.
Sure.
But you know about the Columbine shooters, right? Like the people that committed the Columbine atrocity. There was a lot of hubbub in the aftermath of that event about people saying that video games caused their violent streaks because they had copies of Doom installed on their computer, like the original Doom. So, as is appropriate, since that was such a big part of kind of video game history, to have that reckoning with violence and understanding its effects, or more importantly, its lack thereof on actual people. Dedicating a portion of that Doom review to actually understanding the entire cultural event that was Doom and its entire fallout and interaction with specifically American pop culture. Is a very powerful, very important segment of that review.
I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up too, and maybe it's something we could talk about in a future episode. I actually just typed that in the topics idea channel. But violence in video games, like I would ask you what your take on it is, but obviously we have other stuff to talk about, so maybe something we could think about for another episode.
I mean that can very much be an in-depth topic, but I'll just lead off by saying Doom Eternal, and if you want to look up footage after this, is one of my all-time favorite video games. Adore that game. And if you can't draw a conclusion about what I think about violence in games from watching some footage of that, I don't know what to tell you.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So that was my week, more or less. I watched a lot of Tim Rogers, played some Dragon Quest, and also, other stuff that I've talked about previously. Still reading iShield 21. Classic. Still, I'm going to be trying to start Dune this week. Since, that movie came out in theaters, and I'm going to try to see if I can finish that book before Dune leaves theaters, since I would really like to see that on the big screen.
I've heard a lot of good things about that movie. While we're talking about media and whatnot, and I would love to see it just because I love the actors in it, and I've never played any of those games, but that's one of the great things about these adaptations, and I think that's another idea we have for the future is talking about adaptations of games and movies.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And this
I'm going to add that to our list.
It's already in there. I think I added it earlier.
Good. I'll double check.
Yeah, throw it in there just in case, but I'm pretty sure I put it in there at some point.
It's not.
But anyway, I think that's a great example of, for people like me who haven't played some of those games, I wonder where the origin of this is. And that's how a lot of dedicated moviegoers are. That's what they're into. They're like, I want to know all about this, and then they'll start playing those games, and it's almost like a free, I don't know, I guess I don't know the licensing on it, but it's somewhat of an advertisement for that game.
Yeah,
for the whole history of that game.
Yeah, Dune is really old, so I don't, advertising is a bit weird in relation to that. Especially because Dune, from what I understand and its cultural implication that I've seen talked about, was one of the very big inspirations for Star Wars. And it was released in the 60s, I think, originally. The original Dune book, it was pretty old book, and it was thought to be unadaptable for a long point in time. But apparently they've done a pretty darn good job with the new one. So I'd like to try to read that and see that in theaters.
I think as much as we could talk about these kinds of things all day, which makes for great podcasts. I think maybe it's time you rather, dive a little bit more into the topic at hand today.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that we've mentioned in previous episodes that an overarching series that we would like to do over the course of Pongers is what I've either called like Ryan's descent into anime or Ryan's anime corruption or anything like that. But the core idea is, to chronicle Ryan's journey from someone who has more or less not seen any anime to somebody that, you know, I don't know if you'll fall in love with it, but someone who has, you know, seen a decent amount over the course of this show.
And that's perfect because it's something that we can talk about together. And each episode that this series continues, I'll have watched or at least experienced a good amount more in the time between, and it'll be kind of cool. People will start to see how my opinions change and how everything I've learned will translate into what I have to say about them.
But every journey needs a beginning, and with a medium that's as hard to navigate and can have as bad of first beginnings as anime, I want to start this series off with another episode 0, or maybe we'll just call it episode 1. I don't entirely know.
A callback. We love the callbacks.
Yeah, callback. Episode 0, part 2. Or something like that.
Or like episode 4, when we upload the videos, like episode enter number, here's the title. This is just episode 4, episode 0.
Yep. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
But Ryan needs a good spot to start. And with my knowledge, I'd like to try to talk to Ryan more to get a better understanding of not only what he likes, but what he's looking for in anime in general, to try and direct him towards ideal places to start. And also, once we've figured out a good place for Ryan to start, listing off a few other places that listeners could start of their own volition if you haven't seen any anime and are interested in getting into the medium.
Yeah, well, I'll say this to start off. I think it's a super great idea that you had to, get an idea of what I like. I think, first of all, super considerate. Thank you. And secondly, a cool, just innovative almost idea in how to get this series going. Because as a lot of podcasts or a lot of like episodic things go, having those inside jokes and those series that continue on throughout is super cool. And this is going to be just a way to make this a great starter series. And hopefully we do more things like this. Yeah. But in terms of the podcast in general, I'm super excited about this. But yeah.
So I would also like to say, as a disclaimer, if we were having this conversation in about a year, I think it'd be completely different. Because there are 2 series that I know are getting adapted that I'm pretty sure are releasing the next year that would be just rapid fire, off the cuff, rapid fire, just go watch these as almost surefire recommendations. Mm-hmm. But they aren't actually out yet, so I can't do those rapid fire recommendations. So we're gonna have to actually have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
So
Brian, do you want to hear about just kind of some of the exposure I've had so far?
Yeah, let's start with some background that you've had with anime adjacent things, either video games that people would consider to be anime adjacent, or just anything that you know about anime whatsoever, and also just your general idea of what you want to get out of this journey.
Yeah, well, wow, that was so many questions and I love it.
All right. So then let's just start.
I love it.
What's your background?
Yeah.
What's your background with anime adjacent things?
Just to, actually, I think the perfect way to summarize that question and to answer your other question about what do I want out of this is I just want to be entertained, and I think that's obviously why it's called entertainment. And And I think the hard part about that is what entertains anybody always changes, especially me. And I've mentioned this a few times, just this episode, how sometimes I get bored and sometimes I'm always looking for something new. But that being said, I think most of the anime that I've been exposed to, or anime adjacent, has been very Western adapted things. And I know a lot of anime is not that. The first 2 things that come to mind, and I know I'm going to get slammed in the comments for this, because I'm going to call these anime or anime adjacent, even though they're almost not really anime.
No, I think I know what you're about to say, and I would actually fight to agree with you. If you're about to say what I think you're about to say.
Are you agreeing with the fact that it's not really anime?
I know. I think I might actually fight for it to be anime. I might.
Are you talking about
depending on my mood on the day.
Are you talking about Avatar?
Yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking about Avatar.
Avatar: Last Airbender. That show, funnily enough, I just started watching it again because it's I just love that show. It's definitely in my top 5 favorite TV shows of all time. I gotta say, it's totally up there.
It's a good choice. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's so good. I started watching it. I'll be honest, because when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, putting something on that's familiar is perfect. And then you just get re-enveloped in a show that you love, and you're like, oh, I could watch this all day. And then you do. But yeah, Avatar is one of the two that I'm thinking of. And then the second one actually stems from, and again, these both are things that I got more into in college, which is surprising because when people think of Pokemon, they think, oh, that was my childhood. I never played a Pokemon game, never saw a Pokemon show, never even knew what a Pokemon card looked like until college, until I started hanging out with Mark.
Wow.
Mark, obviously. Of course he's coming up.
That's impressive to have missed out on, like, all of that Pokemon heyday, since we were kind of the Pokemon generation.
I know.
And, like, maybe a bit after it, but more or less.
What's funny is
the heyday.
My brother is super into anime, him and his girlfriend both. And he grew up on Pokemon. And I remember, like, I have memories of him doing that kind of thing. And his kids, my nephews, my brother's quite a bit older than me, but hear that, Josh? You're old.
Wait, your brother's name is Josh? My brother's name is Josh.
What the heck? That is kind of weird. But yeah, anyways, it's wild to me having that exposure, like that secondhand exposure that I never got into it, especially considering what you said, that we were part of that generation. And it wasn't until college, like I said, that I started playing any of the games. My 2 roommates, when I first got an apartment, Mark, obviously, of course, Mark's coming up in this episode, as he always does.
Yep.
They were like, you've never played it? What? Okay, you're going to play this game. And I played it, and it was so much fun. The first game I played was...
So at some point, you just have to be sat down and made to play Pokemon.
Yeah, they had to culture me a little bit. And my friend back then, Jacob, he downloaded an emulator on my phone. So anytime I'd be busing anywhere as a freshman or going anywhere, I'd play Fire Red on my phone. Beat that game. Then I played Heart Gold. Then I played Platinum. And then I started watching some of like the early anime, like the first series, and then I think was it Orange Island? Is that what it was?
I didn't actually watch a lot of Pokemon anime,
but that was the other anime that I was talking about. Was another very Western adapted thing, just because.
I mean, but Pokemon is actually an anime though. That's originally dubbed in Japanese and then is brought over to America. So like that one is legitimately just anime.
That's fair. But that would be like the number 1 anime I know the most about, if that's considered anime. If Avatar is considered anime, then Avatar's my number 1. But
Avatar is that's contentious because that one was actually made in the West.
It's an anime plus. It's something. Yeah. It's something different. But that being,
I would fight for it because I think stylistically it's close enough. But
I think it's more stylistically close to anime towards the beginning than it is towards the end. But they throw stylistic things in there all throughout the series, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Even in Legend of Korra, they do the same thing. And I won't talk about my opinions of Legend of Korra because I know a lot of hot takes.
That's a topic for another time.
Yes, that too. But I know a lot about like other animes. I've just never seen them. Like Full Metal Alchemist, heard about it. There's so many more that if you name, like I know other ones, but I can't name them off the top of my head. But that's the first one that comes to my mind. My Hero Academia, another one. But yeah. That's kind of all I know. I just know lots of titles.
Yeah, so that's your...
Sorry, there's one more.
Yeah, okay, what was the other one? What was the one more?
You know it. You know what I've played. Danganronpa.
Yeah. I wasn't sure that you were still talking about TV or going into games.
Sorry.
But yeah, that was the one in my background. It's like, okay, how am I going to get to that? But So Danganronpa is what makes me think that this project will work. Because if you can play and like Danganronpa, you are already set to go down the anime hole. I don't have to do any cushioning, any like betting of my hedges or anything.
Because you already kind of have an idea, yeah.
Yeah, no, because Danganronpa is about as close to anime as anime can get in terms of like the wackiness and the over the topness and just a lot of anime tropes in there. So if you can play and like Danganronpa, you're in already. You're in,
guys.
We just got to find a starting spot.
I'm in. I'm a weeb now. This is great.
Episode -1.
I'm writing that down too.
Yeah, it's already begun.
Episode -1. It's begun. But yeah, so
it started already.
It's been started, my guy. It's going. We're already like halfway done. That's
see, because the thing is, it's like I, like many other people who have watched anime, have theoretical conversations about like, okay, if I have somebody that is skeptical on the anime concept, here's where I would start them. If someone is just, hey, get me started on like the actual stuff, that's a completely different conversation. There's so many different levels to this conversation that you can have that it really makes it hard. But now that we've already eliminated that thread of the will he even like when anime is being very anime, since you've played Danganronpa, that's a lot easier to get into.
And I think you're obviously like a pretty good for the purposes of this episode, you're the expert. You're definitely someone that can recommend that to anybody, not just me, but to anyone. And I think hopefully, and I know you said at the beginning of the episode that this is more of you trying to teach me about things, but there's probably a lot of people that are hopefully listening, that don't know anything about anime also, like me. So in that sense, they're learning along with me. And guys, we're on the team there. I got you. We're learning together.
While we're here and while we're on the easy topic bridge, I just want to throw out. So for audience members that have not really gotten into anime and are skeptical about the topic, here are a few somewhat easily accessible series that you can get into. Netflix just added the anime Cowboy Bebop to their catalog. It's a classic, and as a bonus, it has an English dub that is very, very good, very well regarded. To the point that people will be genuinely surprised if you do actually watch it with Japanese audio and English subtitles. So that is a very easy bridge. Focuses a lot more on adult characters versus like the teenage/high school characters that are so prominent in a lot of anime storylines. And is generally like a pretty calmer, pretty stylistic, pretty interesting series to actually jump in and start off with. That is, I could say, is a pretty easy on-ramping series for those who have never watched any anime but are curious but are skeptical about the concept.
Yeah. I've actually heard of that one as well.
Yeah. It's like essentially about like space bounty hunters in the far-ish future. Just trying to scrape by a living in outer space. What
someone told me about that one, I think, and this is how I knew about it, or how I when you said Cowboy Bebop, like how I remembered that, was because someone compared it to, you want to guess what show?
Firefly.
Friends.
That's nonsense. That's a nonsense comparison.
Let me explain to you why.
That's like saying that like Monopoly is the Dark Souls of board games. That doesn't mean anything. That sentence doesn't mean anything.
Let me explain to you why. So
okay, go for it.
So there's a character in that show, and this is something I obviously know because I won at Friends Trivia every year. It was there's an actual trivia episode of Friends where they're competing against each other to see who knows the other group the best, boys versus girls, and that's kind of also what inspired our my familial competition.
I was guessing that, yeah.
And one of the questions was about this guy, one of the characters named Joey. He had an imaginary friend, and he had a certain occupation, and that friend's name was Maurice, and his occupation was space cowboy.
Yep.
And someone explained to me that it was what was going on in Joey's head. Your reaction says everything. Obviously,
I don't think
obviously, I know that's probably not the case because I'm sure Joseph Tribbiani did not think about anime a lot.
Yeah.
But that being said, that's how I remembered it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. Like, the first episode... So each episode has, like, a tagline going out. And the very first tagline at the end of the episode is "See you, Space Cowboy." So, you know, it's the very least, like, that direct comparison is directly there.
So does that mean that episode of Friends is an anime?
No. No. Absolutely not.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine Friends as an anime?
The one where it's animated.
Yeah. Dude, that was good.
It's like if right, I'm gonna get a bit heated at this point. If Friends was an actually good sitcom, you know, like something like Community, they might do something like that. But you know, they didn't. So
that was funny. Oh my god. Sorry. Anyway,
yeah, so we know that you have bought into anime to a degree. Because you have played Danganronpa. And also, for the audience members wondering what the heck Danganronpa is, it's a murder mystery series. You can get it on PC and most modern consoles.
Steam.
Where 16 high schoolers with special abilities, like some of them are like the ultimate baseball player, ultimate detective, ultimate clairvoyant, all of that, where they're trapped inside a building and are told that if you want to escape, you have to kill one of your classmates and get away with it. So if you like murder mysteries that get into the absurd territory pretty quickly, I'd highly recommend it, since I think they're very, very good murder mysteries.
And speaking as someone who's never really been into anime, for lack of better words, or just never seen any anime, I really enjoyed playing. Well, I'll be honest, I only played 3. I watched a playthrough of 1 and 2. But playing V3 was really cool, especially considering when I had watched 1 and 2, I didn't know there was going to be another one. Nobody did.
Yeah.
So when
we got to tread light on spoilers, since it's a very plot heavy series. But just, you know.
True. I won't say anything else, but I was just
blanket recommendation from yours truly.
I was very excited when there was another one coming out.
Yeah. So you have had the buy-in. So what series do you know about in anime? I'm curious as to what you actually know about in terms of series. You can list off names or anything that you know about, or just anything. I want to understand your headspace.
I think I mentioned it earlier, but I've heard of a few other series. Like, I've heard of My Hero Academia. I've heard of Full Metal Alchemist. Excuse me. I be honest, I don't know much about either of those shows. I know that Full Metal Alchemist, I from what I remember someone telling me, is that it has to do with like the Sorcerer's Stone or the Alchemy Stone, or some kind of like magic, like science-y type thing. I know I probably sound so ignorant about all this, but those are 2 that I've heard of, and probably heard a lot more than I remember about.
Philosopher's Stone.
Thank you. Excuse me. Philosopher's Stone. What else? I feel like I know I've heard of it. You're gonna list some names, and I'm gonna hear them and be like, I've heard of that, but recall
I'm
isn't
gonna try not to get into super list heavy.
Sure.
Since you know, when I just get into list modes, it turns into me saying a stream of proper nouns that doesn't mean anything to anyone except for the people that this conversation isn't pointed at. You know, I could list off series to flex my knowledge to the anime people, but this isn't necessarily for them unless they're here to point and laugh at the person that hasn't watched any anime.
Right.
But so, you know, from what it sounds like, it's a pretty basic understanding of anime. Like, I could list off more, but I'm not going to.
Fair.
So now we kind of have to start narrowing down a few different criteria to try to figure out what might be the most optimal series to actually start you off on.
I'll be honest, I think Full Metal Alchemist really piqued my interest when I heard about it. At least that's what I remember.
Yeah. I mean, and I would say, number 1, to you, Ryan, and to all people listening, watch what you're interested in, first and foremost.
Yeah, it'll give you...
Yeah.
It'll give you a way better... I mean, obviously, I don't know a lot about anime, but just knowing about watching TV and stuff, when you want to get into a genre or get into any like type of theme, watching something you're going to like is going to be a game changer.
Yeah. So, you know, at the end of this conversation, Ryan's going to make his own decision. I'm not going to mandate that he watches anything. It's up to him in the end.
Even though you are the rule maker of English, you're not the rule maker of my my
I'm not
TV
the rule maker
habits.
of anime. I don't have a degree in anime, although I did take an anime class in college. So like,
Oh, that sounds fun.
there's something there. There's something there. But I think so. If you already have one in mind, we can do some more conversations as other steps to take after you've watched Full Metal Alchemist.
Sure.
But I might almost recommend maybe not doing that, since from my mind one of the best ways to get into anime is to start with a shorter series that has a quicker payoff, and Full Metal Alchemist is in the 65 episode range, and admittedly each episode is just a half an hour episode, so you're not investing 64 hours off the bat.
Yeah, I feel like that's not too bad. I mean, when you think about
Yeah.
it, that's like 3 seasons of a show. I could knock that out in a weekend probably.
Yeah. I mean, especially compared to other things like One Piece, where the 1000th episode is going to air within the coming months.
Yep, another one of those
65
episodes.
is significantly easier to talk someone into than watching 1,000 episodes.
One Piece, another one of those shows where I was like, I bet I've heard of that, and I've heard of that.
Yep. Yeah, well, I've mentioned it a few times since I'm a One Piece fan.
All right, that. I'm sure I've heard it from many sources, but yeah, I believe that you'd be one of them.
Yeah.
Given who you are.
I didn't watch it, though. I read it.
Oh.
So I didn't spend that much time watching that. That would be
So that's a question
hard.
I have. Like, when... Like, I'm just going to use an example off the top of my head. Harry Potter. People will compare the movie to the books all day long. Some people are total Potterheads, love all of them. Some people have never read the books, only seen the movies, but still love them. Some people have read both and seen the movies and just hate the movies because they're not a good depiction of the books. What is, like, the debate on reading anime versus the TV shows?
Yeah, so
Or
by
movies.
and large, it really comes down to series by series. Since there are some series that have excellent adaptations, there are some that just transfer what was originally written onto screen. It's just, it's in a different medium, nothing really spruced up. And then there are some that make the source material worse. By and large, I think the ratio between all of those, anime, I think, has the best ratio from good adaptations to average adaptations to bad adaptations.
I totally believe that, because I know a lot of anime start off as like manga or start off as some kind of literature, and they all get adapted. And when you look at, like, there's so many books out there that aren't turned into movies, and there's so many movies that aren't based on books. Like, when you look at a movie that is based off a book, 9 times out of 10, the book is way better. And I don't really hear a lot. I mean, I guess I'm not really in that community as much, but I definitely don't hear a lot of complaints about, like, TV series anime.
I think there's a few reasons for that, and I'm going to get into a bit into how the sausage is made before we get back to the previous topic. So there are a few things to talk about. The reason that, like, so many anime that exist are adaptations of manga is because that's actually where the money comes from. Anime is more or less kind of just an advertisement for the manga. So that is also kind of the end goal of a lot of manga, is to get an anime made of them.
Oh. So it's a little bit more purposeful in that way.
Yeah. There are some series that you, like, I give it as, like, a highest compliment. When I start a new manga series and I'm like, this is made for an anime, that is, like, a compliment, because I know that this, like, will do well and has, like, a wide enough audience that it will do well as an anime. And there are definitely a lot of... So, to move on to point B, there are definitely series that, like, the source material, so, like, the manga or whatever, is better than the anime. One Piece, I would say, is one of them, since the adaptation rate gets significantly slow and the pace gets really, really rough in the anime. So, One Piece is over 1,000 chapters and it has about 1,000 episodes at this point. An average pace of adaptation where you're watching it and you don't feel like the adaptation would be slow would be about 3 chapters to a single episode. Gotcha. And we're at the point where we're about at 1-to-1 between episodes to chapters.
So One Piece is a bit slower paced of a...
Yes, and there's a lot of filler episodes where, stuff in the show doesn't that doesn't happen in the manga happens and all that stuff.
And I'm sure there's a lot of
the anime production committee some time to make stuff.
And I'm sure there's a bunch of episodes where, like you said, filler episodes where there's like flashbacks and stuff. Because as you said, I believe, I think you said it in last episode. That's like just a commonality between all animes. They have a lot of flashbacks.
Yeah, for sure. But in terms of like the big name properties that you might have heard in anime, so like Attack on Titan.
Also heard of it.
Is that a name that? Yeah. So Attack on Titan, by and large, a really well done adaptation. Since so much of that series is action, giving motion to that, big plus, big plus.
Big plus.
Yeah. And something like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Also heard of that.
Very famous adaptation. Spawns ton of memes simply, again, by having motion and color when there wasn't originally any. Full Metal Alchemist, I haven't read the source material, so I don't know how that adaptation is in terms of, transferring over. But I've heard that it's overall pretty good in terms of transferring over.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, Anthony, my question at this point, my biggest wonder, if so to speak, is based on knowing me, and anybody who has a different opinion or who agrees or whatever, please comment. I want to know because, again, this is something I don't know a whole lot about, and I would love to learn more about it. What, out of all the anime have you seen, out of your favorite ones, what do you think is the one I should start with? What do you recommend? And I know you've given some criteria, what's he interested in, what maybe is a good one to start off, pace wise or time wise. What would be your number one recommendation?
So, if I had to choose one to start almost anyone off on anime, my personal choice would be the first season of One Punch Man.
One Punch Man?
One Punch Man. Yeah, so it was more or less the anime that got me into being an anime fan, but it's about a superhero who's a superhero for fun that beats all of his targets in a single punch. Which doesn't sound very interesting. I realize that, but how
long do episodes last? I mean, bad guy shows up, he goes boom, and then the episode's over.
I mean, somewhat, kind of. That's how some episodes play out. But the author of it makes it, not only very comedic, since it starts off as more of a comedy focused thing.
Sure.
But the author is probably one of the best authors working in anime/manga at the moment, because he's able to make, even though that he's going to win in a single punch, make it really interesting to get to that point. And when it finally happens, just have you bust your gut laughing. And also just because the main character, Saitama, can beat everyone with a single punch doesn't mean that he knows exactly where the danger is, or who the danger is, or that other people who get to the danger before him won't try to stop it and have their own character drama and character arcs and story and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, a pretty short show with very high quality action. Does a decent riff on superhero culture, which I don't know whether you are full on Marvel or more leaning against Marvel at this point in time, but it was something that I, even when I was in my most anti-MCU phase, deeply enjoyed and found just overall very, very funny. And it's also just, again, an incredibly easy to watch. It's on a lot of platforms. It has an English dub, though it's not my favorite. But it is a very easy recommending point and a starting point for people, since it is more or less perfectly paced and is just a branching point for many, many other series. Because if you like One Punch Man, I can ask you, what you liked about it, and I can come up with 5 to 10 other series for you to look into and watch from that point.
Okay. Maybe it'll be a good way for me or for the audience that hasn't seen anime to see what they like based off of that.
Yeah. But one of the other main options to go into instead of series that might be an even easier commitment is to just watch an anime movie. Instead of, having to sit down across multiple sessions, movie, you're more or less just sit down and you're one and done. So Brian, do you like The Legend of Zelda at all? Have you played any Zelda?
I have played Wind Waker. I have not finished it. I need to.
Okay.
You can ask Mark. He'll tell you how neglectful I've been to playing that game. Not that I don't like it. I just forget about it.
And is that the only one that you've played, or have you experimented with Breath of the Wild at all?
Nope. Just Wind Waker.
Okay.
It's the only one.
All right. Well, even with that minimal experience, if you want to have an easier loop in, I would try watching the movie Princess Mononoke, and I'll spell that out in our chat, and I'll make a list of all of the recommendations that I remember to put in with short descriptions of all of them in the description for this podcast. And a basic short sell on that for Princess Mononoke is: young man is cursed by a demon that invades his village and must hunt down what spawned the demon in order to cure his deadly illness that he got by getting cursed by the demon.
Interesting. That kind of reminds me of like Death Note a little bit, even though it's not the same premise probably, but it reminds me.
It's very because the Princess Mononoke is set in like the 1500s, 1400s. Very much more rural wilderness age of humanity versus modern day. But the Princess Mononoke is made by probably the most well-known anime company named Studio Ghibli. If you've heard of any of the movies like Spirited Away, or what else have they done that a lot of people would know about? It might just be Spirited Away that people would know about, or Howl's Moving Castle.
I had never heard of Studio Ghibli. Is that what you called it?
Yeah, Studio Ghibli.
Never heard of that, but I have seen Spirited Away twice.
Yeah, that's an anime right there.
I just totally forgot about it. I saw it maybe at sometime in high school with my friend Brian, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's a really I feel like and forgive me for going off tangent one more time, but
no, go for it.
I feel like forgetting that's an anime for a second, that's just a classic movie.
Yeah,
and as far as animated things go, top notch.
Absolutely. It's also, from what I understand, the only non-American movie to win Best Animated Picture.
Really?
Just as a fun note there.
That is a fun note. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Certainly more fun than any Death Note I'd receive, but...
I mean, I've been reading Death Note recently.
As long as you're not receiving Death Notes,
that's another
you're good.
topic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you don't receive... That'll be a fun thing to look back on once you have actually read or watched Death Note. That will be
well, there was like a weird... There was a Netflix adaptation that I watched that was really freaky.
That was bad. It was like the live-action Death Note is really, really, really awful.
Good to know, because I didn't know. I didn't know anything about it when I saw it. But anyway, for a different time.
Yeah. But Princess Mononoke is by the same people that did Studio Ghibli, and since they're owned by Disney, they have money to shell out for high-quality voice actors.
They're owned by Disney? Spirited Away was made by Disney.
Yeah, no, they're not made by Disney. Sorry, they're distributed in America by Disney.
Oh, okay.
So they shell out like big-name people. So they've featured the talents of Christian Bale, Patrick Stewart. There are a lot more that I should really know off the top of my head. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think, got another role in a Ghibli movie.
That is really interesting because, as far as a lot of moviegoers, there could be people who are like so into movies, so into the MCU, just so into any, like our friend Hannah, super into movies. I don't know how much she knows about anime, but anybody could be into...
Well, I know one of the movies that she watched when she was a child was a Ghibli movie.
Okay.
My Neighbor Totoro.
I've heard of that one too. But, there's just a lot of people that are into that kind of thing that may not be into anime, and hearing about some of these stars that they've seen in their favorite movies be in these anime movies might make them think, oh, these are probably pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it also just helps that, like, when you have the higher budget and you can get, like, the big actors on there, it also, generally gets you better performances than you do on a TV budget across 12 episodes or even more episodes to get, big name actresses. No one's going to sign Patrick Stewart for a 12-episode series. That's just not going to happen.
It's not. I mean, financially speaking, that's expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, I'll say this. I definitely have learned a lot more about anime than I've ever learned. And obviously the whole point of this episode was to just for you to get a lot of background information, but I feel like I got a lot of background information.
The background information and the starting line. So I think, we're not setting any kind of deadline for the next episode, but before we have the next episode in the Ryan's Anime Descent series, he'll have seen at least one anime series all the way through, or one anime thing. It could be like a movie or something else. Up to him. He'll let me know when we do it and we can talk about it, and then also where he can go from that in his next anime journey.
And I'm sure I'll have questions and you and I will talk about it more outside of recording, but yeah. In the meantime, I have a lot of ideas and I'm excited to...
Yeah.
Because the thing about... And I'll keep this short because I know we're running low on time, but I think that one of the coolest things is like when you discover something that you didn't know existed that you fall in love with, it's like the coolest feeling ever. And I just know that's going to happen with at least one series, one movie, one anime media, and I'm excited.
I mean, my current favorite TV show is an anime. Like,
I believe it.
And I didn't think that would happen before I started watching anime back with One Punch Man or Ghibli movies and stuff.
And the only thing that I think I have left to say about this about anime, about this episode in general is, gosh, I have so many ideas for the title of this episode. It's gonna be tough to narrow it down.
Yeah. It's gonna be
it's gonna be really tough
for sure. Yeah.
So Anthony, that just about sums it up, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Like it feels like we just barely scratched the surface. There's so much more that I want to talk about, but out of respect for our viewers' time, we'll keep a lid on that. I don't want to do too many episodes on this frequently since this isn't an anime-focused podcast. It's not supposed to be that. But I'd like to maybe possibly in 2 months or so return to this with a successful anime viewing from Ryan.
And maybe for those of you guys that are interested in this type of topic, it may keep you on your toes a little bit. And then when we come back to it, you'll be like, yes, this is exactly what I was waiting for.
Yeah. Exactly.
But yeah, well, hey, thanks for teaching me about anime. I think this is a great background.
And I feel like I've barely touched the surface of it. I had so much I wanted to talk about, but it'll just make me excited to do the next episode and maybe bother you to start One Punch Man or Full Metal Alchemist or something.
Like you said, we just scratched the surface. That's perfect because the next time we get into it, we'll dive right back in where we left off.
Exactly.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I will be sure to do my homework outside of the episode. And
homework. I've tricked him into doing homework.
What have you done? I thought I was done with school. But it's something I enjoy, so it doesn't matter. And anyway, hopefully something that you guys enjoyed was this week's episode of Pongers, and we look forward to having you in the next one.
Bye.
See you guys later. Anthony, what else we have? That rap sums about fuck. That's a blooper that it's gonna go right in the beginning of the episode.
Yep. Reddit. Or I think it should be saved for the end of the episode. It's a nice little treat for people who have listened all the way.
After we
put it after the closing music.
Yeah, it'll just be like beep. So Anthony, I think that. What do you think? Sums it about fuck. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so sorry.